everybody who's sitting, sit in the back, behind any cameras. But you're going to stay because you saw the green. Get up in front so we can show if you have an audience. Here, show that line, sisters. Mom can say no. And while we're waiting, we take our cell phones and put them on the and this time, we will be streaming live with our friends at the DJ. So we ask the people that are on the camera, do not move. Talk to either Monica that we have or myself that we're having to set up on here. We're going to be doing a lot of fun programming and a lot of events. Even though we are donating, I accept donations in one day. So if anybody's feeling generous and wants to throw any money,
It's not many of us in the room, but you know they're casting it out to the community, so you still have to look decent, okay? No one's picking and choosing and, you know. I get yourself. Okay. I don't know.
Do you need her to, does she have to speak into the mic?
Can I just do the introduction from you?
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Everybody.
Good night.
My name is Amy Parker DeSorbo, and I am the Territorial Director for Libraries, Archives, and Museums. And I am so excited that all of you are here to join us today. We have our first territorial-wide event, so it's very, very exciting. Lots of new things are happening. We want to thank our commissioner, Jean-Pierre L. Oriel, for giving us support and making it possible, as well as the Brian Roach administration. So, to my side is our Chief Territorial Curator, and it was her concept and idea to bring home a Shiro. It's so important that we honor Virgin Islanders, especially the ones that just go out there in the world and like just achieve their dreams. You know, and we're very, very excited to have a very special author and woman and Virgin Islander with us. So I want to introduce Monica Marine, who is our Chief Territorial Curator.
Thank you all for coming. We are so thrilled to have the brilliant Tiphanie Yanique with us, and I'm going to share a little bit about her work. Tiphanie Yanique is that rare writer who has received critical acclaim and awards in 3 literary genres: poetry, the novel, and short stories. She is also an outspoken activist on behalf of the Caribbean diaspora, having appeared on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman and published a passionate op-ed in the New York Times on the U.S. response to hurricanes in the Caribbean. Her second novel, Monster in the Middle, was published by Riverhead Books in October 2021 to wide acclaim. Vulture praised her as one of the most inventive and talented stylists of her generation. Her poetry collection, Wife, won the 2016 Bocas Prize in Caribbean Poetry and the 2016 Forward Felix Dennis Prize for her first collection. Her debut novel, Land of Love and Drowning, won the 2014 Flaherty Dunnan First Novel Award from the Center for Fiction, the Phyllis Wheatley Award for Pan-African Literature, and the American Academy of Arts and Letter Rosenthal Family Foundation Award, among other honors. Her debut collection of stories, How to Escape from a Leper Colony, won 2010 National Book Foundation 5 under 35 honoree. She has additionally been awarded the Boston Review Prize in Fiction, a Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, a Pushcart Prize, a Fulbright Scholarship, and the Academy of American Poets Prize. We are so thrilled to be partnering with Tiphanie. Thank you, Tiphanie. We love you.
Good night. You know, I just cuss a lot, right? And they have me in a church. Presenting in a church, this is a problem. I will try my best to, contain. I'm so nervous, like crazy nervous, which just make me cuss more. So But I'm very happy to be here. I just landed like a couple hours ago. So I'm so happy to be back on RAC and back home. Being at home and presenting my work at home is always the most important thing to me because I write for all of us, primarily for us. So being able to be here and share the work with you is really important to me. And thank you all for being here. And thanks to the folks who are watching it, wherever you're watching it. And I have plenty of people to thank also for making this happen. And so I just want to make sure I do that. I want to thank first Monica Marine. You know, we have a territorial curator. That is such a cool thing. Like somebody who's in charge of doing cultural programming on the island is just really amazing. And I think we couldn't have picked someone better than Monica, who is just so knowledgeable and smart and kind and just like creative and really an amazing human being. She actually taught my eldest child art. So that's how much I believe in Monica. So I just want to thank you for having me, Monica, and having me be part of the inaugural programming for your position. Thank you so much. I also want to thank Amy De Sorbo for her work in supporting Monica, for being the territorial director of libraries, archives, and museums. My grandmother was a librarian, so Amy's work is really very important to my heart. So thank you, Amy. I know JP is going to arrive at some point, and I want to thank the commissioner of DPNR for putting this event together, for hosting it, making it possible. JP and I went to high school together, so I'm going to just call him JP and be sacrilegious. But he is, as you know, our commissioner of DPNR, and I think doing an amazing job, at least from what I could see up there in Yankeelandia, he seems to be doing a good job. So I'm grateful to him. I also want to be really specific in thanking Jawe, David, and Dara Cooper for being here, because the beginnings of myself as a literary artist happened with these two women at my side. When we were doing Rock Lounge together back in the day in Frenchtown, and there is no now if it wasn't then. So I just want to thank you guys so much for being here and supporting. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing where artists just be alone and doing the thing, and we are supposed to be all, wildflowers. There is some bullshit. Oh, Lara, don't start. The truth is, it takes a community, does it not? It takes a community. And I know Dara back from when we was in high school. We used to play pan together, and we was musical artists then. And I know Jawe as a fellow poet and a visual artist, and I wouldn't be here without the Sistren artistic community. So thank you. Thank you also to Amechi Thomas for accompanying me, making sure that I'm not nervous and having a little breakdown before the event. Thank you. Okay. I also want to thank this space because we're in a church. And because when I was growing up, this space was really, a very important space. And I want to thank Monica Prosper, who's in the back, for her curatorial support and for the work that she does in programming. Monica, thank you so much. Oh, look, and she went pause and so. Thank you so much for letting us have the event here and for doing a great job. And thank you to the tech people and all of we. Okay, I'm going to start to read now. All right. The way I think the program was going, I will read for about 10 minutes. So settle in. I'm going to be reading from a male voice. People have often been requesting that I read from the chapter that is actually called Monster in the Middle. That's in the middle of the book that's called Monster in the Middle. And because I usually only read for about 10 or so minutes, I usually only read the first half of that section. So I thought I would do a little solid and read the second half of the section, so that there will be, some of you have seen me read from this part before. I have some people who will come in. I mean, this is like your third time come to my reading. So thank you all for my groupies coming. I really appreciate you, familiar faces. So I thought I would just, not bore you to death, and I would read the second part of it, so you could hear a little difference. But it is a male voice, so you have to pretend like as a brethren up here, and it's set during the Vietnam War. My character is a Virgin Islands man. He's from St. Thomas, and he has been drafted to the States to fight in the Vietnam War. And this story is actually based on information that I got from my uncle, Tony Bryan, who was a police officer here in St. Thomas and who was indeed drafted on Christmas Day over to fight in Vietnam. And a lot of the notes that are in the book, I gleaned from him. My brother is also a soldier. He's actually on island right now. He couldn't make it today. His girlfriend is not feeling well. But a lot of what I also understand about the soldier's life, I gleaned from him. Again, never one person doing it, right? Always a community. After I read for 10 minutes, I think we're going to open it up for questions and so. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. Thanks to Pam also, who's selling books in the back, bookstore 340, our local bookstore on Island that you really must support. I should tell people, when you buy the book, it don't go in my pocket, it goes to support our local institutions. That's where it goes. So I really, please support Pam and the work that she's doing to keep literary culture alive here on Rock. Because without Pam, we wouldn't have no independent bookstore. Like, that's a fact. So thank you, Pam, for the work that you are doing for the community. And I would be remiss if I didn't also say, I want to thank the spirit of Adi Atli, one of our really important cultural contributors. Ashe. Just thanking him for the work that he did. He was so supportive of all of us young up and coming cultural makers, had me on the show many times, quarreled with me about nonsense I was doing in my books, but also continued to support me even when he thought I was doing nonsense. And I know maybe some of you think I'm doing nonsense too, but you're still here, so thank you. And Adi was such an important cultural figure in his own right, but also that he lifted us all up. And his physical passing is a serious grief for the island, but what he has done for us will never ever go away. Okay, I'm gonna stop chatting. I chat when I'm nervous. Okay. So this story, I'm just starting from the middle. So he's already at the base. And his mother has recently passed away of breast cancer, which he finds out when he's on the base. I've been living with sickness for over a year, close to it. My mother told me she never breastfed me. Baby formula just arriving on Island when I was born. Everyone thought the powder was better best. So mommy scraped to provide it for newborn me. What I'm trying to say is that even as a baby, I never seen my own mother as God created her. But then as a grown man, I had to face her breast, care for it that long, hot summer of love. The nipple sinking in, the huge red blister that took over until my mother dived into it, the blister and the breast. I was there, taking care of sickness. I knew it well, thank you, God. Black boy bile, the officers called it. In America, I was the black boy, despite my half-blood history. Coughing up spit, all fake, but it fooled them. Remember, sweet daughter, I bled so bad those first days at basic? It wasn't that I was a coward. It was just that I realized I didn't want to war with the history of my old man, not after all. I didn't want anyone to hold up my life to his and see if mine was more worthy, not after my mother died. I never really knew the man, my father. He didn't live long enough. He was my first monster, maybe. And I know he would follow me, has followed me, but with a dead mom, well, I decided I wasn't going to nam. I wasn't going to be the drink till I'm dead puppy, this time of maybe half mongoloid children, but still. His story is mine because I lived against him. That made his life as much an influence as if I lived beside him. I didn't get that then, but now I just thank God. America, believe me, even though they couldn't always catch what it was I was saying, I've been a good talker back home, talk to the doctor, talk to my aunt about what to do with my mother's things in the event. The army officers believed I was sickly, too sickly to shoot a gun good, too sickly to even look like a good target, so sickly. Me? My whole life, I never even had the flu. I'd sprained my thumb once, but never a wrist or an ankle. Sick wasn't my thing until it was. Then faking it so well made it so real. And now that's how you know me, Stella. You poorly papa. You hypochondriac dad. Well, the war. For me, there was no walking among tropical trees that might make me long for home. No blinding light just before the rat-a-tat-tat of a screaming enemy. No warm sweat in my face and pits. No, my war stayed cold and quiet. I was put to ironing the uniforms of those who came back dead. I ironed alone and in air conditioning. Had to keep the clothes crisp, ready them for their formal funerals. Easy work on the body, hard on the mind, because it was Vietnam times. And so about the many who came back dead. And so you know about the many shirts I had to iron. And so you know about the many monsters that live with me. I never fought in that war. I ironed, and I did it well. Did it tender, like how you just make your art, your drawing. So to that I say, thank God for every color. Thank God for every sizzle of the metal when it kissed the starch. Thank you, God, for the dead who came home for me to dress them. Because, dear one, what happens to you is on me. My fault and my parents' fault and Vietnam's fault too, because when I saw you in that basket, you reached to me and it wasn't like you wanted to be picked up, no ma'am. It was that you wanted to embrace me, rub me on the back, just a baby, but already you there assuring me that I was going to be just fine, fine. So you don't know about need. Known since you was a twinchy thing, my fault, for sure. But what I'm trying to say also is that you could choose against me, like I did my pop. It worked for me when I turned away from that instinct. Go with your gut, my mother used to say, but sweet girl, the gut ain't always good. Depends on what you've been feeding it. Because regardless, this monster, it's still coming for you. It's always coming for you. Them undershirts hot from the dryer, they come for me. And I was thankful for the heat in that cold room, and that is my whole war story. No clearing of light and jungle of grenades, just a still life of stiff shirts. I was an artist in there of a sort. Pants with creases that could cut you, my sweet girl. And being honest, sickly now, that is just the small price I pay. And I am thankful for my wife and my boys and for you, the daughter who chose me, the one who cares for me best. I do thank God. I'm only sick now because I wasn't dead before. And let me tell you, there were so many ways to die in that America of 1968. Now for me, it's going to be cancer, like my mother. What else could it be? Mine in a private prostate. The story of the monster on my back, the monster on your back is not just one of fathers and daughters, but also mothers and sons and mothers and daughters and even grandparents and aunties and first loves and second and third loves and who knows what else. It's all in there. Meeting you in the middle where you are, where you always are. This is how the whole of history works. And you and me, the whole of us, we aren't anything separate from history. And when the government released me, there was the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, the GI Bill, let us call it now. It was that or keep working heat in the coal. Pushing an iron was the only skill I learned in the Army. I did it expert, but it didn't serve me. Couldn't go back home to our island of St. Thomas just then. There was no home there anymore, not yet anyhow. So what did I do? I wandered. Years of that. Small jobs, medium jobs. Malcolm had been killed, King too. By then I was American enough for all of that to matter. It seemed like Black manhood was dead. Guess that was the point. Took me a while, years, to get on a good path, but I knew I didn't want to be alone or lonely. So eventually I marched to Morehouse, where the Afro-American boys went, like it was my duty. You see, yes, this is an American love story, because on that first day of school orientation, there was a speech for the Morehouse men and the Spelman women, the two schools tied up together. The speaker said that thing I gotta know all the college presidents in America always does say white or black. The person sitting next to you might be your future husband or wife. And me, I was at the end of the row. I was older than most, and I'd been unsure about coming to this big meeting at a college to begin with. But then I was even a little ashamed to have been a soldier at all. Death will do that to a man. So I'd snuck in late. On one side, there was no one next to me. I stared at that empty space for a while to think about that. It had been so lonely ironing all those years. Nobody's to grieve over me because they was dead when it come to me. But thank God for that New Year's Day. And for all the New Years and new days, I am so thankful for all of it, every bit. Because there in the great hall, with that man talking about looking to our right and our left, who was that man? I wish I could thank him. He spoke so well and so clear. I turned from the emptiness at my right, and there to my left, your mother. Looking at me like She'd been on a long journey just to get to that self-same spot. And when she said, "Good morning," I heard her accent. Imagine that, a Virgin Islander. And at her feet, a baby basket. What year was it by then? 1993 must have been, because in the basket, you, sleeping. Though I would come to know that sleeping wasn't so much your style. Me, I didn't know yet how your mother could cuss like cussing could kill, how she could love like loving alone would make me live, how she could take a motherless man, me, and make a father and a husband. All I knew was that I hadn't heard those St. Thomas words in so long, sound like my own mother. And then you made a noise like about to holler, and me and your mother together, we look in the basket, your eyes open, looking at me like you already know I was going to be your daddy. Your arms reaching out to me like you've been waiting for me to find my way to you. Thank you. All right, I'm done with the formal thing. And now I'm less nervous. So I think now is we will have questions, and I will answer all kind of questions, whatever we want to talk about the book, the state of the nation and of the territory. I don't know. My nice outfit. Whatever you want to discuss, we could discuss, and I'm happy to answer questions. And I will call on you because I'm a professor, so I will just be like you. So whatever, I'm happy to talk for a little while.
I have a question.
Hi, Monica.
What would you tell aspiring young writers? Or what are the words of encouragement that you would tell them? What are some words of inspiration?
Do I have words of encouragement really? Or words of discouragement? Like, go be a lawyer or a doctor, you're gonna make more money. They don't have no, there's no millions of dollars behind this. In fact, you have a life of quarrelsomeness and strife. But actually, what would I say? I would say maybe two things. This maybe is obvious. You should read, don't done reading. And I said that because a lot of my students and even a lot of people who I meet when I'm on book tour will say things to me like, I don't want to be influenced by so-and-so. So I haven't been reading these writers. Sometimes they'll tell me, I come to your reading to ask you questions, but me ain't read your book. I ain't gonna read it because I don't want to be influenced. I'm like, oh, wait, where you come? But I think influence is actually really important. You should want to be influenced. Influence is key. If we're not influenced, we're just gonna be trying to do things that done been done already. So it's actually really important to figure out who your masters are, your literary gods and goddesses, and worship at their altar. And read them again and figure out what they're doing and emulate them so they could eat them and go past them. Because you can't go past the writers if you don't already know what they're up to. That's really important. So like study under the people who you consider to be your guides. And do that with humility. I do it even now. And I read, my writers are Jamaica Kincaid, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I read their books again and again religiously, and they never cease to stop teaching me. So I would say you need to find those people and read them. I would also say that sometimes you don't need to go live your life. Because a lot of times I will have people who are like, I write for 8 hours a day, but nothing, but I'm still struggling. I say, but that's because you're writing for 8 hours a day. Like if you're just doing the labor, but you're not out there living, you also, are not doing the work. Because doing the work, I think, is also about being who you striving to be in the world, I always say like kiss all the boys, go to all the parties, like just like have a life that feels meaningful to you so that you could put that meaning into the work. Because otherwise your work is going to be, surface and vapid. So don't be afraid to live, and don't be afraid to leave the art alone for a little while, and come back to it. If you have the talent don't disappear. So, living your life in an intense and honest way, I think, is also really important to the artistic truth of artists. So, yeah.
Wonderful. We open up to more questions. When did you know you had to make a story out of it?
This particular story, I could tell you a lion thing like, oh, the lightning bolt hit and God speak and, and I think often too, a lot of writers create mythologies about themselves. Like I couldn't, if I wasn't a writer, then nothing else I could have been. And I actually think that's really unfair to people who are trying to become writers, because the truth is you could have always worked McDonald's, you could have become a doctor, you could do all kind of other thing. And it sounds really, to me, sort of like overly privileged, like I so special, like that I couldn't do anything else. You would have stopped if you couldn't write a book, right? So I would say this story came to me over a long period of time. I worked on this book for 14 years. And while I was working on this book, I wrote Monster in the Middle, I wrote Wife, I wrote How to Escape from a Leper Colony, all while also working on this book. But I also wrote Wife while working inside of Leper Colony. And I wrote Leper Colony while working inside of Land of Love and Drowning. So I'm always working on multiple projects, and I kind of just wait to see which ones kind of catch me and lead me, and which ones I feel most, inspired by. So I would say that I sort of waited for this to kind of catch me. And early parts of it were based here at home in St. Thomas. And then I started to think about, well, what is it that I want this book to be? I probably didn't even think about this until like year 6 or 7. And then I knew what I wanted it to be in response to this woman who writes the epigraph. I will read it to you. This woman wrote this book where she said that, her name is Vivian Gornick. She's a literary critic. And she says in her book, if you put romantic love at the center of any novel today, who could be persuaded that in its pursuit, the characters are going to get to something large? So her whole book, which is a book of literary criticism, is arguing that love, especially love that is romantic, is kind of like stupidity, and it doesn't really work in smart literature. It's only going to work in like romance novels, bodice ripping kind of thing. And so I say, well, I'm going to write a smart bodice ripping kind of thing and see, is it possible that romantic love can do deep, important work in our lives? And my argument is that it can, and that maybe it's actually a really important part of getting to some truths in our lives, which is to like face yourself with an intimate partner. Sometimes we can get to that too with our children, like having to just like hold up a mirror, which is like anybody who's a parent know, like your children now may be holding up mirrors to you, making you be like, wow, I just awful today, right? But our intimate partner who's an adult and you're equal, you are sharing that. And I think that's actually really profound. And if it wasn't profound, Allah, we wouldn't still be hunting it down, right? So we'd be hunting it, but then kind of shame of it. And so we don't think of it as a smart intellectual, journey. And I wanted to argue in the book that it was. So once I decided that that was what I was up to, then I had to figure out, well, who was going to be Stella's, like her interlocutor. So then I created a whole separate character, and I wanted him to be very different from her. I wasn't sure how. I grew up in Rock. I'm a native, ancestral, indigenous Virgin Islander, and I don't know nothing about Yankee Landia. So I said, well, maybe that's what I must write about, because I do think that artists should go towards what they want to know, not only write what they don't know already. So, her partner is an American guy, and that is part of the tension that they have, actually. So I thought, well, what is going to be the mirrors that they hold up? So I, just write different chapters for a while. Eventually, I decided that the book would also be about what it means to be an American, specifically for us in the Virgin Islands to be like a colony of America, but what it might be to be a colonized body, which I think is what is the African-American reality in America, and how those two things might be connected. So the book is also about that. But we don't actually meet Stella and her man until deep into the book. Those of you are done spoiling the book for you, but don't worry. It's pretty, so you can read it for the prettiness. But we don't meet them till later. We meet their ancestors first. So I didn't come to that idea until like year 11, when I was thinking, well, I think when you meet the person that you fall in love with, you feel like it's them day and they're so special. But actually, when you get in deep, you realize that you're meeting and confronting their mother, their father, what happened to their grandfather, what happened to, that their ancestors are all inside of them. And that's actually an important part of the work that you do when you do love work. And, if you're Black, you probably doing a lot of healing to get to that place. So the book is about healing as well. Yeah. But 14 years. Yeah. Hi.
I was interested just hearing you speak and thinking about the ancestry aspect. I feel like you've touched upon something that's very sensitive, it's mental health, as transferred over the years. Is that something that you think is a topic of the book, or do you think it's like a topic in the islands?
I would say both. It's a topic everywhere. I would say that we have a specific struggle with it here in the Virgin Islands because we kind of keep it quiet or we shame of it. That's not specific to the Virgin Islands, but I think especially in communities that have already been oppressed for various kinds of reasons, poor communities, Black communities, immigrant communities, Caribbean communities, colonized communities, which we are in the Virgin Islands, all of that, that it's the idea of feeling like weak or like not having fortitude, which is sometimes how mental illness is painted, is something that we really do not want to face and talk about and deal with, because we need to continue to be strong. And so we can't be like, actually, this hair hard right now. So I think for me, I really wanted to confront it and talk about it as one of the demons or monsters that we have in our community, in our families, and that if we don't talk about it, then we can't heal. I also think the truth is that I don't think this is such a radical thing to say, but it doesn't seem so unusual to me that people who had to go through 500 years of chattel slavery, and then like the hundreds of years since of dealing with the aftermath of that wouldn't be suffering from extreme psychological and social grief. In some ways, that feels like a very normal reaction to our state, our social state. So I feel like we should talk about it. And the book is in many ways about the importance of storytelling. And if we tell our stories and air out the dirty laundry, we could actually clean the laundry and get to healing. So I talk about it. Yeah, I mean, that was a struggle with my editors, to be honest. They were like, everybody can't be crazy in your book. And I like, you know my family? So, you know, I held actually pretty fast to that, that I wanted to show that the mental illness was coming from both families. And it wasn't like a Caribbean thing or an African-American thing, but it was there in both, maybe like a Western Hemisphere thing. And so I really wanted to do that, but I had to really fight my editors to keep that in, actually. So yeah, they're like, nobody gonna read this thing, everybody crazy in your book. Again, you know your own family? Like, yeah. You're welcome. I'm very long-winded. You ask me a question, I can go on for like 7 or 8 minutes. So, hi.
Hi. So I have a question. I mean, the plot structure is so fascinating. It's sort of elliptical, like out and back and up and back. And when you start out with a piece like this, do you have a sense of like an overall hierarchy of like kind of where you're going to, or do you just like grab out the characters and let them lead you where you end up eventually?
So I was trained first as a poet. That's my initial training. So normally what I'm interested in is letting the language lead me, like a way a person speaks. I'll kind of let that pattern, that music kind of guide me. Like they couldn't say this, they would say this. Well, if they say that, then what else are they gonna say? Like that's kind of what I might do. That piece that I read to you is a good example. Like he speaks in a very particular musical pattern that I keep particular for the whole story. And then I have to reinvent it for the next chapter, for the next character. So allowing each character their individual voice does kind of get me to plot and character development. But this structure, the elliptical nature of it, comes from the shape of the labyrinth, which the book is about monsters, and it's also about religion and the way in which we sometimes go to religion to do some of the healing work for us. You know, people will go to the priest or the pastor before they go to their therapist. So I wanted to use religion as a place where we often go for that work. So I first know about labyrinths actually as a Catholic. I was raised up here, and I was a Catholic over at St. Peter and Paul my whole life. And I learned about labyrinths as something that in Catholicism, especially Orthodox Catholicism, you walk a labyrinth as a way to do penance for your sins. And in the middle of the labyrinth, you meet Jesus, you meet Christ, and you pray and you can be given forgiveness. And then you exit the labyrinth, and that is the healing as you exit, right? The labyrinth is a maze, but you can only enter one way and exit one way. So you don't ever get lost in a labyrinth, which is kind of really important. You always get to the middle, and then you can always get out, which is like a grace. So I was interested in that, like, so the structure of the labyrinth. But then in doing my research about labyrinths, I also remembered 10th grade English that the original labyrinths were actually like coming out of Greek mythology when Theseus fights the Minotaur, and he has to fight the Minotaur in the middle of the labyrinth. And he's able to fight the Minotaur and win because of love, because of his love of the Minotaur's sister and her love of him, actually. He's able to defeat the Minotaur. So that also really worked as a metaphor for the book. So I structured the stories and the timeline like a labyrinth, so that we get to the monster in the middle of the book. That chapter I read from is dead in the middle. And I wanted to sort of tussle with this idea that like your deep monsters, like the Minotaur that you have to defeat, might also be like connected to our ideas of salvation and Christ. Like, what might it be that confronting your deepest monsters can also be what saves you, can be a way to, to Christness. So that's also like a sort of philosophical idea that I'm working with in the novel. And every chapter kind of moves in that way. And there actually labyrinths appear in the book too. People notice labyrinths, walk labyrinths. I'm sort of signaling to the reader to pay attention to that. When a book takes you so long, it just come up with all kind of crazy things to put in the book, Y'all have other questions? People out in the back have questions? Are you out there drinking? It wasn't allowed to bring alcohol inside the church. And yes.
So if you could visualize what you want to happen in the Virgin Islands because of, it doesn't just have to be this book, but all that you've written and all that you're going to be putting out later on, with the new more is coming. What might that look like for you that would make you feel like, yes, this is why I'm doing this? Can you repeat the question so that
Dara's question is, what is my hope for that this book will do here in the Virgin Islands, that my past books will do for Virgin Islanders, and what my future work will do for Virgin Islanders? I think once that is achieved, I will probably dead and stop writing. So that's in some ways somewhat horrifying. But also, I think what I'm up to in my books is seeking belonging. Always, I'm interested in what it means to belong. And that's a real Virgin Islands struggle. That question of who belongs to the Virgin Islands, who is a Virgin Islander, who get to claim, I just rattled off, I'm an indigenous native, blah, 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 Virgin Islander. And y'all know that's very political what I just did, right? And like all of that level of belonging is something that we struggle with navigating here in the territory. And I'm interested in us just having that conversation. I don't know if I have an end so much as I want us to talk openly about the conversation of what it means to belong to the Virgin Islands. But I think that conversation will also ask us to think about, what does it mean to belong to our family? What does it mean to belong to our partner in marriage? What does it mean to belong to ourselves? Like, just what does it mean to find your place and to call it home and for it to claim you back? And I think, we're sometimes afraid to have these conversations because here in the territory, we feel like if we talk about it openly, somebody's going to get sad and cry and carry on. And that has happened. I have been in things where people get sad and cry and carry on. But I think, honestly, my real belief about this, although I am an ancestral native indigenous Virgin Islander, is that what is a Virgin Islander is an ongoing project. And that if you look at our history, we are always being reinvented by newness. So even though I do, and I'll say this again, look for the camera, very political thing, that's gonna probably get people to stop buying my book, but I'll say this thing that I do think like claiming what is a native, what is indigenous, that those things, those labels actually are important. And they help us understand our history. I don't think those labels are about hierarchy. I really don't think so. But I do think they are about us understanding our place and understanding our culture. And my belief about the Virgin Islands is that there's no such, our actual culture is about constant reinvention. And if we honor these different kinds of Virgin Islanderness, then we are honoring our culture of reinvention. And then we can say, well, there are new ways of belonging. Not that there is a hierarchy in them, but that if we name them, celebrate them, claim them, hold up these different ways that we belong, then we could, we could actually all participate in this ongoing question of Virgin Islanderness. It would be fun, and we could do it with honesty and openness, and maybe less tears and carrying on. Sir?
Good evening. Great presentation thus far.
Thank you. Thus far, about to forget up now.
My question has to do with plays. I mean, this seems like just listening to your portion that you read. What's the future? Is this something you're going to put on screen? You're going to do a play? It seems like it's applicable to so many formats. So you're just going to stick to the written form, or you're going to branch out into other areas?
So your master's UVI, you work at UVI?
Yes, I do.
What do you do over there?
Did I take my master's?
They're gonna. Whoa!
No, I'm familiar with you.
Okay.
I
Okay. Yeah.
I know you did a session with our library last Wednesday. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it.
Yes. Yeah.
I work in the advancement area.
Okay.
So you probably see my name with Grant at CFBI.
Okay.
I'm that guy.
Okay. Tell me your name.
Mitchell.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. I have emailed you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know.
Yes, I do. Thank you for your response to my emails.
I'm good.
Oh, you are Chicken's big brother. I used to play pan with Chicken. Yeah.
You're what?
I used to play pan with Chicken.
Okay.
Yeah.
I learned more every day.
He was a bad pan player, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
So I am a fiction writer and a poet, and sometimes every now and then also an essayist. My dedication is to the written word. That's really where I want to continue to play and learn and grow and frig up and everything. That's where I want to dance. So sometimes people will be like, make a movie, do a thing. And I say, but this is what I love. This is also where my skills and talents are based. And this is where I want to grow those specific skills and talents. So I am not the one who's going to go make it into a movie or a play. However, another cultural bearer of our community, David Edgecombe, did produce one of my stories from Leper Colony and turn it into a play that was put on at the Little Theater at UVI. So I hope that the work will be considered belonging to the Virgin Islands. And those of you who are filmmakers, you could have it. We could go. There might be people who their skills and their talent is in the playwriting. And I would love to have conversations with them about moving this onto stage or screen or what have you. But I know where my talents lie and I know where my passion and interest lies. And I would like to be in partnership with people, but it wouldn't be me doing it. The other thing that's kind of maybe important to know is that my book is published by a press. It's published with Penguin Random House, and it's an imprint. The imprint is Riverhead. They actually own the rights to the book because the way that I publish is I sell them the rights to the book, and then they handle all my distribution. But it also means that if I did want to turn it into a movie or something, that they handle that, they negotiate that kind of stuff, and they manage it for me. So it's not like even I actually, could be like, make it into a movie. Like there's like 100 people on a team for the book that is making things happen or trying to make things happen, So even things like my cover, I don't design the cover, where sometimes people assume that I do that kind of stuff. Even the audiobook, I have to say this because I always want to say this. I haven't been able to have any say in my audiobooks until this book. So in my other books, I was a little pian girl from some small island. And so I wasn't getting the same kind of authority over the production of my audiobook from my first books. But Land and Love and Drowning did very well and won a PIPA national prize and thing. So they figured they could trust me now. So when I said to them, when Monster comes out, I really want the audio to be voiced by Virgin Islanders. They listened to me, but they said, hey, you have to go find these Virgin Islanders. So I did contact a bunch of people who then auditioned for the audiobook. I myself had to also audition to do parts of the audiobook. But I was able to get Oceana James, Kushan, George Silcott Jr. I know, right? Oceana's so dope. George Silcott, St. Tomian, myself, and then an American who does the American parts to actually voice, but a Black American, because it's a Black dude doing it. So even things like that, I had to say, can you make sure it's a Black man doing it? Can we give the money, give the job to Virgin Islanders? Even that was hard for my publisher. They agreed to it. But when I had said this in the past, they were like, we want the best. And I would say, but the best home, the best for this book is at home. But I had to fight for that. But now it worked for this book. So yeah. You're welcome.
How do you get the audio?
You go to audible.com on your phone. It's an app. And you just upload it to your phone. I think it's cheaper than the actual hardcover. Although you should get a hardcover and support Pam. Although if you get the Audible, you're supporting Oceana and George, actually. Because the more people download that book, the more work they will get in the future. Because they don't have to only do Virgin Islands books, right? They could do other audiobooks, and that'd be good revenue for them, too. So.
I have one last question.
Okay.
So I love how you're decolonizing, and specifically about being unapologetic about using that, and thinking about Zora Neale Hurston, her new book, and how she was kind of Richard Wright and all of them. You're airing our dirty laundry by using the vernacular and all of that. What could you say, or like what inspired you to?
Yeah.
What are other things that, like, what's your inspiration around language?
Yeah, I think that, in the Virgin Islands, we do this thing called code switching, which I think is like we speak in two different languages. And I think if you went to a school like I went to, and I know there are fellow Vikings in the room, if you went to All Saints, most of us were taught by Americans, and we were taught that beauty and to write beautifully, you have to write in what is called like standard English, American English. And that's actually what I thought for a long time too. My first books were written in like standard American English. My first stories, sorry. And I remember I grew up in Ronderfield, and that's still where home is for me. And when I came home, I remember this guy, Steven Cosino, he said to me, hey, is a writer? I said, yeah, I'm a writer. I was like 21. Yeah, I'm a writer. And he was like, so, why are you writing about us? And it just hit me like, oh, crap. I ain't actually writing about us. And to write about us, honestly, I have to write like through us. And that was really like opening for me. But then I had to sort of teach myself, how do I write in the vernacular and make sure that it's sophisticated, poetic? Because if you see the writing in the vernacular, even with our fellow Caribbean writers, even with our fellow Virgin Islanders, it's usually humorous. We are funny and we stupid, right? That's where when you see the vernacular on the page, we are the punchline in the books. Like that's what Herman Wouk is doing in his books. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we call Virgin Islands literature, 40 years ago, when we used dialect, it was to make us the joke. People who speak in dialect, not sophisticated, not educated. And yet, all of us who were born and raised here know that your smart auntie who have a PhD could still talk raw. So I thought to why can't we figure out how to show a sophisticated version of our vernacular on the page? Because we do it in our talking. So I wanted to be truthful and honest and honor that creativity in our language. It turns out that it's like sort of like activist thing to do because nobody was doing it. And when I first started to do this, editors would say to me, put a glossary in the back of the story. And I would say, no. And I mean, I get it. This is something that Jamaica Kincaid said once when I was in an audience and I was like a sophomore in college. She said to all of us, And it wasn't about dialect, because Jamaica doesn't write in dialect, but it was about some other aspect of Antiguan literature that people were like, how come you don't explain this? How come you don't have a glossary at the back of your book explaining what these things are? And Kincaid, who, if you don't know her work, please go get it. She bad. She said, but you don't ask Shakespeare to explain. I said, what, a woman just compare herself to Shakespeare? And like, how dope is it that like a Black West Indian woman is up there comparing herself to Shakespeare? Like, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna do that. So when they say to me, put a glossary, I say, no, you don't ask Shakespeare to put a glossary. If you don't want my story, don't publish my story. And I have had a lot of things not be published because of that. We can't do this. We don't understand half of what you're saying. No, okay, then don't publish it. If your readers can be patient with me, then they're not my readers. So, but that has meant that I have not gotten things published, not won certain awards, not been invited to certain places, but I could. I have a job, so. And my job I have does give me healthcare, and so I don't must have this book sell at bazillion copies. It's okay. If all you read it, I good.
Are there any more questions from the audience?
Sir?
What do you call home on the mainland, and how is your unique Virgin Island mix
I live in Atlanta, and I never thought I would have lived in Atlanta because I actually thought I would always move back home. And I teach at Emory University, and Emory is very resourced. So when there was a job available, I thought I would apply to the job to kind of help me big up the job that I already had. That's the kind of thing professors do sometimes do. Apply to another job, get a job, and then take that offer back to your original job and be like, look, these people want me. Like a woman being like, you see that boy flirting with me? Like it's the same kind of strippiness that professors do. Get another university to kind of court you to then get your original university to big up, to give you more. But Emory was so resourced that I really couldn't say no. So when they gave me the job, they were like, no, you come into our job. So I was like, okay, I guess I come in. So when I got to Atlanta, I really didn't know what Atlanta was. I didn't have a concept of it. But I remember the summer before I left, I was talking to my uncle, John, and he was saying to me, oh, I hear you're going VI North. And I said, for true? Like, Atlanta is VI North? And he was like, yeah, man, I heard you're going up VI North. That's the next island, Atlanta. And I was like, what? So when I reached, I remember driving around Atlanta and seeing people who have like little VI stickers on their car and literally pulling over, hey, I'm from VI. And they'd be like, yeah, all of us from VI, what's wrong with you? So it turns out that people say that it's maybe our largest diaspora is up there in Atlanta. We all over the place. My daughter is in the VI majorettes of Atlanta. So I feel like Atlanta is very much home in some ways because it has a very rich Virgin Islands culture there. But also it has a very rich literary and artistic community, which I'm a Virgin Islander, but I am also equally as important to me an artist. And there is a very rich artistic culture there, of people who are makers and creators and intellectuals and political types. And that's really good for my work too. So that's home for now, and I feel really happy there. It's also like a Black city, in a way that is diverse. Like the Blackness is really diverse. It's not like a monolithic Blackness, and I really feel attracted to that too. So but that's also the Virgin Islands, right? Like we are so diverse in our in what we are, like even our kinds of Blackness. I went to high school at All Saints, which is the private school, and yet we had people from all over the world. I have friends right now who went back home to Mumbai, and they was my friend in high school, right? And that's where they went back home to. So I feel like in some ways maybe this kind of cosmopolitan thing that I had here is reflected in Atlanta, because Atlanta is very cosmopolitan, but also it's kind. Unlike a cosmopolitan New York, which kind of grumpy, Atlanta is very welcoming. And I have direct flights to St. Thomas, which is maybe the most important part that I shouldn't leave out.
Any other questions? I just want to make a comment. Tiffany, I just want to
let you know it's been an honor to just witness the growth of all aspects of yourself. And to for you to be standing here and giving so many different young Virgin Islanders just the vision of what they could do, you know? So I commend you, I honor you, we honor the spirit, honor the ancestors, with you every step of the way. So thank you.
Thank you, Joey.
Tiffany, thank you so much. I want to introduce our commissioner.
Oh,
Pierre
Chippy.
Olea.
Oh, good.
It's so good to see
It's so good to see you.
I think we should put on a mask for it so they could be officious. So, okay. All right.
Good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight and supporting the Virgin Islands Public Library System. I have to say it is an honor and a privilege to have Tiffany here. When my staff told me they were going to have Tiffany come and do a book signing and everything, I was like, this is perfect, because absolutely no one knew that Tiffany and I actually went to high school together. So I have been able to see a good friend of mine have a passion from a very young age and be able to take that and run with it and make us all so proud as Virgin Islanders. And in the words of a very dear friend of both of ours, Tiffany, you are truly a VI ambassador. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you,
We just want to thank everybody, and we had some sponsors that helped us put on this event. And we want to thank Absolute, and Beefeater, and Jameson, and of course Munafi. We want to thank our friend Tegan from CC1 and Esther, who made our donations for our bar possible. Our friends at Leatherback. We've had some wonderful. We have 340 Books. Please go and support 340 Books. She's phenomenal. And then Ron.
Undercover Books.
For tomorrow, yeah.
Kobe at Fort Frederick. And I'm trying to think who else. I'll thank the other people tomorrow.
So tomorrow at 3:30, we will be at Fort Frederick on the Big Island of St. Croix, and we're very excited to get her over there. We did an interview with Neville James, and I was so excited and inspired. The programming that we're developing, and Monica Prosper as well. We have a curator for Fort Christian. We have a chief territorial curator. We're making things happen, and big programming is going to be coming. And we're going to be seeing some programming with you coming back to inspire our youth. So and thank you, JP, for letting us do these things.
Commissioner Oriel.
We're we have the best commissioner if anybody doesn't know that. We really do. So, and we're really thankful. And thank you for coming out tonight. And thank you, our friends at WTJX. They're wonderful partners. And if anybody out there is listening and wants to volunteer with us at DLAM, we're fun. Come volunteer. We're going to be doing a lot of events, a lot of good programming. And I said earlier, I was joking, but really not. If anybody ever wants to donate to the libraries, archives, or museums, we're accepting. So thank you for tonight, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Good, dude.
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good.
You're making me blush.
No, man, you look the same. I'm like,
I like-
old now.
JP, they were the big soccer, the big football star. So back in the day, everybody look up to him. And now, yeah, it's nice to see you.
It's
Thank
so
you
good
for
to see
hosting
you.
this.
No, please, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, here now. Also, my hands.
All right.
Sorry.
Please visit
He
the
was
bar.
barking.
This is no longer official, right? Yeah, I'm gonna get
All the proceeds are going for programming at this point.
Thank you, guys.